Read, Right, and Wrong is brought to you by the team at City Limits Publishing. City Limits Publishing is a small, independent press created by authors for authors. You can best support the podcast by heading over to citylimitspublishing.com to browse our ever-expanding library featuring unique reading experiences in all genres. Sign up for the City Limits Publishing Book Club and get one new release of your choice delivered every month alongside a curated classic book. Learn all about this and more at citylimitspublishing.com. In the meantime, let's get right into today's episode. Hey there, everybody. What's going on? This is Read, Right, and Wrong, the in-house author chat show at City Limits Publishing, where we discuss everything we've read, what we're writing, and what's wrong with it all. I'm your host, Peter Fenton, and today we are talking all things travel and adoption with Daniele S. Longo, whose new book, Angels, Love, and Lost Souls, will release May 11th. Daniele, welcome.
Hi, Peter. Thank you for having me.
It is so great to have you here. You're from Italy.
Yeah,
right?
I was born in Sicily. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And where are you based now?
Now I'm in Minnesota.
Right.
During my life, I've been traveling a lot. I've been in about 20 different countries, relocated many times, and I finally landed in the United States about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
At first, I was in Cincinnati, and then we all moved to Minneapolis 6 years ago.
Yeah. Why Minneapolis? It seems like a random place to pick up and move to.
We never really put it in our list of places to live, but work took us here, and we love the place. The people are fantastic. It is true it may be cold, but once you get used, you have so many activities and things to do here in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
The life is really very nice.
Yeah. Cool. So tell me a little bit about yourself. So you said work took you there. What is work for you?
Well, I was born in Sicily. My first job was with Procter & Gamble in London. So I moved to London, then I moved to Newcastle. Work for me is really learning about all different kind of experiences. I've worked in many different environments. I worked in consumer electronics with Best Buy. I worked for Procter & Gamble. I work in with a very small company that was based in Cincinnati and properties in Italy. So my job was basically to sell Italy all day.
Right.
I worked for a Chamber of Commerce as their vice president for healthcare and business. And so I worked with many ambassadors from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Minneapolis, I worked with Best Buy, and now I work in healthcare and automation. That is one of my passions. Yeah. I'm an engineer by background. Huh. That is my first degree. And so anything that is technology and anything that can transform lives is very interesting to me.
Interesting. And so how did that move into novel writing for you?
Well, I've always been writing. Since I was little, I've been always journaling. And at home in Sicily, my mother has a whole section of the garage where she has all my little diaries since I was like in first grade, and I would be noting about things that I saw or things that I liked, food that I liked. And as I was traveling in many places, I just took notes of things that I observed and many talks that I had with people. When you travel, you spend a lot of time in airports or train stations or bus stations, or you just walk everywhere. So you just take these notes, and these notes became stories.
Sure. And that eventually grew into the idea behind the book that you wrote.
Right, exactly. And it was a long journey. I started this story about 6 years ago when I actually moved to Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. I met many of friends that are now part of my kind of author supporting group that I'm part of. Mm-hmm. And they were writing, and they were like, Daniel, you have all these ideas, all of these notes. Why don't you just put them on a paper?
Yeah.
And my husband and my kids gave me as a present for birthday a class at the Loft with Mary Callahan. She's an author, and my goal was to finish the story, to just get it all done. Writing. I didn't even look at the grammar. Again, English is my second language, so it's my first language. So by the end of class, I had my first draft, and probably it was horrendous, but at least I had it.
Hey, the important thing about a first draft is not that you have something good, it's that you have something.
Exactly. You have to start somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's interesting. Do you have any what have been some of your favorite travel destinations?
Oh, every place is different. So
Sure.
there are things that you love that you will never find anywhere. So, for instance, in England, right in London, you have so much culture. I spent entire weekends in the museums in London. But then I moved to the north of England in Newcastle.
Hmm.
And the life there is incredible. The food is amazing. I think I will never find any better tasting Indian and Thai and
Hmm.
cuisine that I had in Newcastle. It was so diverse. And,
Huh.
at that time, I didn't have children. And the
Yeah.
nightlife in Newcastle is just amazing. You would never think about Newcastle as a great place to live, but for younger
Yeah.
generations, that is a fantastic place.
Hmm.
Paris, of course, as the
Right.
glamour of Paris.
Paris.
You can't go wrong with Paris. Switzerland has all the beautiful mountains.
I love
One
Switzerland. Yeah.
exactly,
Beautiful.
one country that I happen to love a lot because I spent a lot of time there was also Norway. I've
Norway.
been in Norway many times for 6 years because I had a relationship with a Norwegian girlfriend. So I went everywhere in Norway between Oslo and Trondheim. So my dream is one day to go back to Norway, just rent a car in Oslo and just drive my way through all the way to Tromsø.
Yeah.
And it's gonna take like a couple of weeks, but
Sure.
in the United States, the diversity of people,
Mhm.
the fact that if you go from Ohio to Kentucky, even if they are very close, the culture is totally different. The mindset is different.
Sure.
If you from Ohio to Minneapolis, it's totally two different universes.
Yeah.
And it is what I like. It's like meeting people from different places, understanding what they like, what they don't like, and why they don't like it. What kind of food they look at, what kind of smells they're
Yeah.
smelling, what is the weather, what is the environment, and that is what really interests me in life, to capture all these elements.
Yeah. Oh, sounds like you are the ideal candidate for a travel novel. So why don't we dive into our first segment, recent
Sure.
readings. So Daniele, you have written a travel novel, but what do you like to read?
So what I just finished, I finished a book that it's called News of the World. Have you
Okay.
ever heard about it?
No.
I
Tell me
had
about it.
no idea that you, in the olden days, in like late 1800, early 1800, you could just go to places, read newspapers to an audience, and get paid for it. And
Really?
it's a fantastic concept. I did not know that
Huh.
was possible. But News of the World, basically, the background is there's this gentleman who, I'm not giving away the book, but he has something to do, and he travels to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And the way for him to make money is to basically stop by city and read newspapers to an audience so that he can gather some resources so that he can finish his job
Yeah.
and get to South Texas. The other book that I'm reading is, during pandemic, there is not a lot to do. So
No.
we have been binging on TV shows, and,
Sure.
there are no new shows that are being made, right? So now they are starting, but, for a year, everything was frozen. So we've been watching pretty much everything, and we stumbled into Handmaid's Tale.
Handmaid's
Have you
Tale.
watched it?
Yeah. I have
So
not seen it, but I've heard good things. I've heard that it's too close to reality.
exactly, and that is so. How can I say? It makes it so scary and
Yeah.
emotional, and how can I say that kind of dystopic reality
Mhm.
is so close to the possibility that it actually could happen. So when we ended the series, then I purchased the Testament, which is the book that
Yeah.
I'm going to read this weekend. We have a long weekend, so it's not a big book, but it's basically what is supposed to happen after the Handmaid's Tale. So I'm really looking forward to read that one.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, I love travel books,
Sure.
right? And especially books that are related to travel and food and things. So I found this book that is not a new book, it's an old book. But we just moved to a new house. So I've been taking all of these books from boxes and I realized that I never read it. And it's called Terroir. And the idea behind
Sorry.
Terroir.
Okay.
So the idea behind this book is that food is different depending on where the ground, where it has been taken from the ground. So if you think about the grapes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even the wine doesn't taste the same.
Right.
The wine in California doesn't taste the same of the one from Italy or from Chile or from Argentina. So everything that this book is about is to learn about all the things that are really, really good in a certain place and why are they? Why are the oysters on the West Coast different from the oysters from the East Coast? Right? Or truffles or the salmon, what kind of, all different kinds of salmons, why they are different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started that book and I'll take it with me for the weekend.
Cool. Yeah, it's always fascinated me that blueberries from Maine are incredible and blueberries from everywhere else are shit.
Or grapes, right? Even the grapes, right? Depending on where they are coming from, they all taste different.
Yeah. Like I really like California wines and I don't love French wine, which I recognize that might put me in the minority, but I prefer California.
It depends what you drink. If you drink whites, reds, rosé, what kind of wines do you like?
I mean, I like the Sauvignons. So I like Cabernet and Blanc. Those are the two that I like.
Now remember, you're talking to an Italian, so we could be just talking about food or just wine for the entire hour.
Sure.
I can divert in any different places when we talk. You know, that is what I like.
Mm-hmm. What wines do you like?
It really depends. So that is why I was asking you, what do you like? What kind of wines do you like? Mm-hmm. So I do like a lot of Southern African and Australian whites.
Okay.
But I do love the French wines when they are like those red and very strong wines that you would drink with meat or very nice flavoring dishes. Italian wines are so diverse. Italy is a multi a fragmented countries, section of countries inside a country. So, you know, if you are in the north, you have certain wines. If you are in Sicily, you get the dry wines. It really depends.
Yeah. Well, interesting. Italy was a country that I didn't really get to explore much. I had a traveling summer internship one of my years in college, and we stopped in Italy, but it was just like the northwestern corner of Italy.
Okay, so you went to Turin.
Yes, I went to Turin.
That is where I went for my college years. That is where my mom used to live. Okay. So in Turin, you probably tried the reds.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Okay, so the reds, you always have to pair them with food. Mm-hmm. So for Italians, wine is not a drink, it's actually a food. So you pair wine with a certain kind of food. And depending on the wine that you are picking, you have to pair it with the right food. So then you have a different appreciation of the flavors.
Right. I mean, it was a couple of years ago now at this point. I don't exactly remember what it was we were eating, but there was definitely food on the table along with the wine.
Oh, you had a lot of meats?
Yeah.
Red
I think
meat.
It was red meat, maybe some kind of sausage, something. I don't.
Did you have polenta?
Yes, we had polenta.
That is because it's from that part of the country. Yeah, absolutely. So the sausage was with the polenta.
Yes.
Probably.
Yeah.
Nice.
So there we go.
Nice meal. Did you get into all the magical experience of Turin? Turin is a magic city.
We weren't there very long. We were just there like 2-3 days. So I didn't really get to explore too much. I was working as a photographer for a band that was traveling. So it was mostly we set up shows and tore down shows, and that was about it.
Did you go to Superga then? Probably the church on the hill, Superga?
No, I didn't get a chance to see that.
Didn't get to okay.
But I mean, sometime when I'm not tied to work, I want to explore Europe and everywhere that I went, but didn't actually get a chance to do too much.
Well, you need to get a work assignment that will take you traveling, right?
Right.
And
Right.
do different kind of interviews or podcasts with all the different authors that are now part of the family of CLP, and
Well,
that's
yeah,
is an
maybe
opportunity
someday we
after
can get
COVID.
maybe someday we can get City Limits Publishing to commission, you know, Daniele and Peter travel
There you
through
have it.
Europe,
We can travel in Norway from
and
Oslo to
you can
Tromsø.
show me all the wines.
Well, there are not a lot of wines in Norway, but phenomenal food. I can
Yeah,
tell you, the food is incredible there.
I've only ever been to the Norway and Epcot, so well, interesting. So those were some of the books that you have been reading and some of the wines that you've drank. Um, what are some of your all-time favorite books?
So there is a book that I always reshuffle every 2 years. That is War and Peace.
War and
So
Peace. Okay.
yes. So
Russian.
if you are an author that writes about multiple point of views, right? War and Peace is one of those books that you can read it today, and when you take it again in 2 years, you will flavor different things. You will probably get engaged with a completely different character and his or her story and his or her point of view. And then 2 years later, you will probably look at a different one. It's
Yeah.
such a universe of characters that
Huh.
kind of play all together in that history. Have you read it?
I have not read it. I do have a copy of it. When I was a summer camp counselor, I kept it in my cabin. And one of the rules that I had was you couldn't walk in the cabin with shoes on. And so if one of my boys stepped inside with shoes on, I made him open to a random page in War and Peace and read it out loud.
But it is a beautiful book. It is
Yeah.
very intense. There are a lot of emotions. There are two sets of people in a war setting, and it's all about how different people deal with the war. Some people, they look at the war like something, yeah, whatever, it's just far away, it's never going to happen, never going to touch me, and then all of a sudden there it is, it's coming to you, and what are you going to do?
Interesting. Does it take 2 years to read it?
No, I take it, I read it every 2 years.
No, I know. I just know
intense.
it's a massive book.
It is a very intense book, yes. So, it's not one of those books that you can just screen in a couple of days, you're done.
Right. It's not a breezy beach read.
Exactly. And then the things that I really love reading is anything that is on rice. I love it.
And rice.
And rice, yeah.
Not about rice.
Not about,
I thought you said.
We can talk about that too, right? But that is a different topic. I also collect old books.
Okay.
So my oldest one is from 1600.
Oh wow! What's that one?
Yeah, and I have a great collection of Harper's Bazaar magazines from 1800, Atlantic Monthly from 1800. And what really is fascinating is learning how people thought 200 years ago about topics that we are dealing with today, like diseases, for instance, right? And 200 years ago, farming was considered medicine for plants. So it was actually part of medicine, but it was farming. Think about traveling, right?
Yeah.
200 years ago, if you were traveling from Europe to the United States, it would take you weeks. Mm-hmm. So think about the emotions of a person who has been on a boat for weeks, right? And seeing always the same people, always the same wood of the boat with some colors, and it's the sun and the sea, and hopefully the weather was nice, right?
Yeah.
And finally, a couple of weeks later, they land in the United States, and all of a sudden, it's land. Think about all the emotions that would bring, right? Right now, we jump on a plane and we land and we just go through security and you're on a car, right? So you don't have that kind of change until you're actually talking with people who talk a different language.
Right.
But the feelings and the emotions of 200 years ago, moving from one place to the other, were really strong. Also because many people would just move to the United States and they would never be able to see their families anymore, right? Nowadays with Zoom or Portal, you can always talk with your family. I talk with my family in Italy twice a day through Portal.
Oh yeah,
instance, right? Or Messenger.
very sweet.
Yeah, but hundreds of years ago, that was not an option.
No, you just had memories.
Exactly, little pictures, photos.
If that. No. No. In reading some of these really old books, have you noticed like cartoonish racism or sexism?
Oh yeah, the language is different, right? But again, you have to go back to what people thought at that time, and you just had to filter with your brain, and you say, okay, I did not read that word.
Right. Yeah. That's just like, that's the one thing that's sort of holding me back from reading a lot of these classics, because it's like, yeah, I get the idea of this story and how it has stood the test of time, but how much do I want to get into the mindset of somebody from so long ago?
And you know, you can be careful. So you could read an old book from 1800, but reprinted today, right? So a lot of those things would be filtered out. You would not see them anymore. Okay?
Yeah.
Or you could have the old book in the old version, and then there is no filter. Whatever they wrote 200 years ago,
right?
It is what it is. It's not going to be filtered. So but there are still books that you can safely read. So for instance, yesterday was Dante's anniversary, right? So Dante in Italy celebrated the anniversary of Dante, not the birth of Dante, but actually when he wrote his book Inferno.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the Inferno was the first, and then you have Purgatory, and then you have Paradise, right?
Yeah, the Divine Comedy.
Exactly, the Divine Comedy. So there are books that have a certain language, and they have certain concepts that will never change, and those are like safe books.
Right.
But then there are other books that talk more about reality, like travels and politics, and other things that you have to be careful.
Yeah, you just do. And you have to recognize it was a different time, and also not hold the same view that they had.
Exactly. Yeah. You just filter them, and you know that the people in those times, they had different beliefs, and they believed in different things and a different set of values, and you're fine with that. You just accept it.
Yeah. Good. So why don't we move into our next segment, Writing Away. So you have a new book that is coming out on May 11th, Angels, Love, and Lost Souls. And I understand, just reading your bio and through skimming your book, I can sort of trace the connection between your story and the novel. So tell me a little bit about the book.
Yeah, so Angels, Love, and Lost Souls is the story about different people, how their lives kind of connect together, and how they eventually find a path together. So, and it's mostly a story about family, different kinds of families. So you may have families by adoption, you have natural families, you have friendship that become a family, right? And so in the book, you have the story of Joan and Laura. They have adopted a child, they actually fostered a child. And during the process, the child goes back to the original family. So they lose the only child that they could have because they can't have children.
Right.
And they kind of lose themselves. So they lose the relationship. They don't know anymore what they are as a couple, what they're supposed to do, what their life is going to be. And by chance, they get connected with a couple of entrepreneur, kind of naive travel agents, Gerard and Sebastian, who have an idea, but they really have no idea what they are doing. They don't know how to start. They have a business plan, but they really have not planned per se a trip until this one. This is their first trip. But they want to make sure that their customers are going to have the best experience ever. So they send their customers to Sicily to figure out a new way of living and maybe rekindle their relationship. And as John and Laura go to Sicily, they get into situations and relationships that will change their life forever. I can't really say everything, otherwise I will give away the story. But the idea is that as we walk in our paths during life, we meet all kinds of people, right? And all the people we meet and we talk to and we gather insight from and we gather also some kind of guidance, they're all there to help you. We all help each other. We're all part of an ecosystem where I'm helping you, you're helping me doing something else, and we both grow. From that relationship, we all have an opportunity to grow. Sebastian and Gerard, they kind of figure out at the end of the book some kind of relationship. They're very close friends, but are they something more? We don't know. John and Laura, at the end of the book, they figure out a way of creating a new family. But also for Sebastian, it's an opportunity to understand who is his family. He does not know a lot about his family. And as he goes to Sicily, he thinks that he's meeting people that his father recommended to him, but then realizes that these people are something more.
Interesting. Now, I can't help but notice your name, Daniele S. Longo. S is
Sebastian.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So was this a personal journey for you?
Yeah, so there are a lot of things in the book that are personal moments. My husband and I, we went through the adoption process. So there are many elements and many moments of our life that are actually in the book. Sebastian and Gerard are also our middle names, and the personalities of Sebastian and Gerard are so different. Sebastian is very naive. Everybody's a good person. Everybody's there to help you. He would cut his arm to make sure that the person he talks to or is working with, it will get the best, right?
Right.
Gerard is more straightforward. He sees everything black and white. And that is kind of the dichotomy that we also have in our family.
Sure.
For me, like it's all like a rainbow of colors. There are no black and white. For my husband, it's more like, no, this is how it works.
Yeah.
And so I try to put that kind of dynamic in the book. There are a lot of family elements, especially when we talk about Sicily. The opening is very close to me, is basically how I saw Sicily from the eye of a young boy. I left the island a little bit more than 20 years ago. And the fun thing is that, you always think that people and places will remain the same, and in your heart they are. But in reality, you have to realize that you are going to miss all the nuances. You're going to miss all the new things, even the language evolves. Sometimes I talk to my sister and she's like, Daniel, we have not been using that word for like a decade.
Yeah.
So, when you go back, you think that nothing changed, but a lot of things have changed.
Yeah.
And I try to crystallize those memories that I had in the book.
Yeah. And I think that any book that is personal is going to have a stronger impact than a book that the author doesn't feel as much personal connection to. Right. So I think that you have the recipe for a very strong story for the reader heading into picking your book up. Trying to think what my next question is.
I told you earlier on, be careful, you're talking to an Italian.
Oh yes, I know. I'm choosing my words carefully. Yeah. So you have a number of photographs in this book as well.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that. So do you do photography?
Yes, I love capturing moments. So with me, wherever I go, I always have a notepad, and now I have a phone, but most of the time I have a camera. And because I like capturing all the colors I can't capture flavors through a picture, but I have tons of beautiful food pictures from anywhere in the world that I try to capture. And in the book, you will find a lot of these moments. There are pictures of Accireale, which is the city where I'm from. There are pictures of Palermo. There are pictures of a very special place that is on the east coast of Sicily. It's a hotel, Pensione Mirabella, which is this utopic place where everybody goes and they can solve their problems just eating and drinking and talking with each other, and everything is great. It's this
Sounds
kind
like
of
Italy.
It doesn't exist specifically, but there is a picture of the closest I could find on the east coast of Sicily. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun going through your photos and selecting which ones we were going to include in the book. There were a lot of great snapshots that you got. So half the book takes place in Italy and half of it takes place in Minnesota.
Minnesota, exactly.
Right? Yeah. And yeah, I remember, I think one of my favorite pictures was one that was from Minnesota, actually. It was the ice cream wagon.
Oh, that is one of the best ice cream places ever.
Yeah.
It's very simple, right? They only have 4 or 5 different flavors. The very interesting thing is that I'm lactose intolerant, so I cannot have ice cream at all. So the best place to have ice cream in Excelsior, where I live, my kids, my husband, they just love it, but I can't have it. But for some reason, I can't have the ice cream from that little bus, yellow bus, and I just have to take a special pill, and I'm fine.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I think some of the oftentimes with food places of any type, it's the hole in the wall type of place that you'll get the best food at. Yeah. Like I think the best pizza I ever had in New York City was a place where I don't remember what it was. It was just, it seemed like a family run place. Yeah. It was just tucked in between a bunch of other places, and I just walked in, got a slice of pizza. It was the best pizza I ever had.
But going back to wines, right? It is the same. Most of the time, the wines that are the best are not the ones that are the most expensive ones.
I've heard that the best wines are like in the $10 to $15 range.
Yeah, the important thing is that you know where they're coming from. Right. Mostly they are very small, family-oriented kind of vineyards, so they don't have a lot of money for marketing. Sure. But their wines are just amazing.
Yeah. And are those ones that you can find imported, or
no, you can find them
have to go
everywhere.
to the place?
If you know which ones they are, you can find them pretty much in every store.
Oh, wow.
Now, in Italy, right, because we have all kinds of wines, the price of wine is very, very, very low compared to here. So sometimes you can find a wine that in Italy would be like a couple of euros. Yeah. Here is in the $20 range.
Sure.
Right. So when you always think about it,
it's cheaper than water.
It's still the same wine, but as long as you know that it's good, it's great.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I remember, well, when I was in Germany, the beer was cheaper than water. I imagine it's similar in Italy with wine versus water.
And remember, in Italy, wine is considered food. So we don't drink like a bottle of wine by ourselves.
No.
We may have a bottle of wine at the table, and we may just have half a glass of wine while we are eating the meal.
Sure.
And the funny thing is that I remember being like 5 or 6, and I was already drinking pink water. My grandfather was just putting a little drops of wine in water. Whenever we had birthdays or like big events, he was like, "Oh, have some wine." For me, it was wine. It was just pink water. It was probably horrible to taste, but I was excited. And I grew with the culture that you really don't need to drink a lot of wine to be happy. You just need half of a glass of a very good wine with your meal, and that is great. That's it. That's the point.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's why we have more of an alcoholism problem in the States than I imagine in Europe, right?
Yeah, because for us, it's normal. It's like, you go to a Starbucks, right? And you have wine. You can have your aperitif at the equivalent of Starbucks, which is a bar for us.
Sure.
But, we don't have age kind of limits for drinking, right? But we also don't look for it as much as here.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, what I think about with the US's relationship to alcohol. It's like the tree in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, it's like the
Where
transgression. If I do it, is like really, really a big thing. In Italy, it's like, yeah, whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like yeah, it's we're told you can't, and so therefore we want to. And in Italy, it's like yeah, just have wine, whatever.
No, but we have a different relationship with with cakes, right? You shouldn't have a lot
Oh,
of
with
sweets,
cake.
but in Italy, we have so many phenomenal cakes and sweets and things. And it's like, oh, I really want it.
Yeah, interesting. What is your favorite type of Italian dessert?
Oh, well, from Sicily, it's cannoli.
Yeah.
Have you ever had cannoli? Or
I have
tiramisu
had
is
cannoli. I
fantastic.
don't think I've had, authentic, really good cannoli because I've not loved it when I've tried it, but it's been here in the US.
Yeah, yeah, those the cannoli, and then of course granita. Uh,
What is
so
what is granita?
so granita is how can I explain it? It's something that it's funny. Italy has a very long history, and Sicily too. Granita came from actually the Swedish. So
Okay.
Sicily was under Swedish ruling for 300 years. Sicily in the southern part of
Oh,
Italy, and
good for the Swedes.
I know. And so, in fact, many of the cakes and sweets that are in Sicily, and especially in the Palermo side, they're very similar to the cakes and the sweets that you would find in Scandinavia, in
Huh.
Sweden, and Norway, and in Denmark. If you think about it, stockfish, that
Yeah.
is a product that comes from Norway. You can bet you have the best stockfish like meal in Sicily because
Oh,
they were bringing it to Sicily.
sure.
And the national what's it called, the instrument for Norway, which is the harpsichord, you can find it in Sicily all the time. So when you go to different countries, especially in Europe, because of different dominations, you have
Sure.
all these elements that, oh, wait a minute, that's from France, or that's from Germany, that's from
Yeah.
Sweden. It's just because people were just moving around all the time.
Just
But yeah, cannoli, tiramisu, granita. And so granita is basically made with the very, very, very thin ice and cream, and basically just melts in your mouth. And I think I have one of those pictures that when I send all the pictures, and you
sure.
always eat it with a brioche. And when I was
Yeah.
little, you would dig the brioche. So you would take all the inside of the brioche out, you put the granita in, you put the top on top of the granita, and just eat it like a sandwich. You would have like a
Oh.
granita sandwich. That was our breakfast when I was little. Nowadays, I can't do it anymore.
No, too much sugar.
But my kids, whenever we go to Italy, I mean, that is their breakfast and
Yeah.
afternoon snack. I mean, they could just live on granita.
Well, they're kids. Their metabolism will catch up with them at
Exactly.
some point. Well, good. So why don't we transition into our final segment, all the wrongs. So let's talk about the writing process for Angels, Love, and Lost Souls.
Yeah.
So you said you had finished the first draft at the end of this class. What was the process like of getting your book finished? And where did you run into issues as an author?
I ran into issues since the beginning. So
Yeah.
because I had all these ideas, I just literally dumped them in my first draft. And
Yeah.
all of these characters that were in my brain, they have their own life. Gerard and Sebastian have their own social media platform. They already fired me once. So I put too much. And thanks to all my friends and my beta readers, I started killing off things that, I'm not deleting them. I'll be using them in a different book, but at least the book as it is now, it allows all the characters to have their own space. Sure. Before, it was just too much, and you couldn't figure out where each one of them wants to go. One of the characters didn't even exist in the first draft.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Martina was never supposed to be in the book.
Okay.
So
tell me a little bit about her.
So Martina is this kind of ethereal person who has plenty of money. She has plenty of authority. In one of the following books, you will find out what her story is, which is not that glamorous at all, but she became that person. And because of her wealth and the knowledge and the people that she knows, she can help Sebastian and the travelers do things that they by themselves will never be able to do.
Sure.
And it came out because I was stuck and I couldn't get to, how can I say it without saying anything? I couldn't get to the end of the book. I knew where the story was going.
Yeah.
Right. But once you get to the end, you really wonder, how am I going to find a way that everybody's going to be happy and whatever is going to happen at the end of the book is actually going to happen. So I was at the airport and I was really like lost, completely lost. And I remember it was one of our travels with my family. I was going to Italy. I'm like, okay, I have my final class in 2 weeks and I have to finish this draft. And I don't know, I know how the book is going to end, but I need something to plug it all. And this beautiful woman literally passed through the gate. And I'm like, that's it. It is her, and she's going to figure it out. And in fact, there is this scene where Sebastian is lost.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know what to do. And all of a sudden, Martina appears. And it's like me at the airport, really having no idea how to finish this book. And she literally passes by, and she's everywhere in the book. She's from the beginning to the end.
Yeah. Real life writes the plot.
Exactly. It's like one of the, like, how do you resolve your block? And I really never had a block. It's just that sometimes you get so involved in the story that you can't figure out how to put all things together. So I have I call it my funnel box. I collect all things from, like, weird things. Little things like little rocks, little notes from people, little things that have no value, but they're like different. I put them in a box. And whenever I get stuck a little bit, I just take one random thing and I'm like, okay, what would I do with this rock? Why is it red or blue or whatever? What's the story of this rock? And then all of a sudden things are moving again.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. I've not heard authors doing that to problem solve and get over writer's block. It's interesting. Just coming up with the story of some random object.
Yeah.
That just gets your mind thinking of creating something.
And all of a sudden your juices spin again.
Yeah. That's interesting. I'll have to try that sometime. I am currently stuck in my current new project and I'm not quite sure where to go with the story right now. So I will
turn around and the first object you see in your shelves, try to find the story of that. Just think about the story of whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And could you use it in the book?
Yeah.
Right?
That's definitely worth thinking about.
Where is it from? Who made it? And who bought it? Why did you buy it?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you have an idea.
Interesting. Yeah. So Angels, Love, and Lost Souls is this your first book?
Yeah, it is.
Cool. What was the process like in getting published, in getting signed? How was that process for you?
So it is actually very funny because I started kind of connecting with all different agents. I participated to a couple of kind of events where I could meet with agents, because one of the things that is really interesting is the industry overall. This is something new that I had no idea how it worked, right? And I always enjoy learning new things. And as my manuscript was done, one of the things that I wanted to do was to learn more about the industry, what it is and how it works and what challenges there are. So I went into a more curious mode where I was trying to understand how to sell and market the book, but also how does the industry work? And so I went to conferences, I met with many different agents, and I started sending the manuscript to many different people. But the funniest thing that happened was that I participated to Pitmat.
Yeah.
And literally, I sent a tweet on the day that I was leaving my previous home. And the funny thing is that we bought a house, we sold a house, we had a month gap. So we had to leave our house, stay with friends for a month during COVID, which is not easy, right? So you need to find a place where you can just close yourself with your family and no interactions, and then move to the new home. So I sent out the tweet and we literally left the house. So we left the house and we drove to Cincinnati for 12 hours. And then is when I started receiving all the requests for the manuscript.
Sure.
And think about having everything packed and stored in a truck that you're not going to see for a month.
Yeah.
Right. And then you start getting all these requests. Oh, can you send me 25 pages? And you're like, everything is in the truck.
Literally everything's in the truck.
Literally in a truck in Minneapolis, and I am in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So it was a very fun experience, but it worked. And we went through final revisions and the selection of pictures, and it was a fantastic experience. So now I'm working on the second one.
Sure.
That is based in Norway.
Okay.
So I have to get to Norway.
You have to get to Norway.
To take pictures because, all of my pictures from Norway were taken at the time when I didn't have a digital camera, right? So they're literally like the old style pictures that if I scan them, they are not going to be nice. So
yeah,
I need to figure out a way
unless you make that intentional, right? Like, oh, these are bad pictures from Norway.
Exactly. The colors are not right, and they don't look beautiful. I need new pictures. I need to go to Norway.
Well,
but my books are all about things that I am engaged with. So first book is all about the adoption. So I was on the board of an adoption agency. So I heard many stories of families going through the adoption process. We ourselves, we have adopted 2 children from Kentucky.
I was going to ask. I thought your children were adopted, but I wasn't.
Yeah, my children are adopted, and my husband is adopted, and my sister-in-law is adopted. So I'm
oh wow!
Even my dog is adopted. So I'm the only one.
You're the only first family. Yeah.
Exactly. And then all the challenges that right now are going on in Europe with all the migrants moving into Europe, but also in the United States currently, we have all the same issues. So those are topics that I was really interested in. I wanted to crystallize them in a book. The second one is is a little bit more serious. Okay. Because it starts with a cancer situation. Right? Oh. Okay. And there is another field where I'm very passionate, cancer, because I've lost my very good friend to cancer. And so the opening of the book is it's a scene that is very, very close to me. And with my books, my goal is to be able to support certain organizations that are in that field. And so as I will support adoption agencies and other agencies that are related to the story, then the second one will be supporting other organizations. Like my first fundraiser is going to be for Dragonfly Foundation. Oh, yeah. I don't know if you're aware of Dragonfly, but basically it's a foundation that raises funds for families and kids with cancer. And so I'm really looking forward to have the book published, because the fundraising is in June, the publishing is in May. So I'm really hoping to get it all coordinated so that I can get everything ready for the fundraising there in Cincinnati.
Well, that's really awesome. I'm glad you shared about that. Daniele, it's been wonderful talking with you today. Really a pleasure. I'm so excited to see your book released in May 11th. That's like 6 weeks from today we're recording.
Yes.
Something like that. You can order your copy of Angels, Love, and Lost Souls everywhere books are sold, on citylimitspublishing.com or through Amazon or Barnes & Noble or any of those other big sites where they're selling books. We will certainly be blowing up social media on the time when it's at the time that Angels, Love, and Lost Soul is releasing. Thank you so much. Any final thoughts for our listeners? Where can people find you on social media?
So you can find me. So Gerard and Sebastian have their own platform. So yes, Gerard N with the N Bastiano is their Twitter account, and then GerardandSebastianTravels.com is the website that I'm working on.
Very nice. Well, thank you all for listening. I'm Peter Fenton.
Thank you for having me, Peter. Bye.
Thank you. This is Red, Right, and Wrong. What are you still doing listening to this episode? Hit pause, head over to citylimitspublishing.com and find your next book. I'm your host, Peter Fenton. You can find me online at bypeterfenton.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram at peterfent. Have a great day, everyone.